Okay, so I don't see a build video or any instructions with this airplane, so I decided to make one myself in hopes it helps somebody. Anyways, this is a Red Eagle model, the Prime version. Um, there's a lot of resellers out there, but Value Hobby is one of them that, as of this video, still sells them. I think they're about 40 bucks or something like that, but it's a profile plane. It's really nice, actually. And this is the parts it comes with. Obviously the fuse, wings, tail section, and there's a rudder hidden here somewhere, right there. And it comes with these parts. That's going to go on top of the wing, and some random wooden stuff. I've been looking at pictures. This is for landing gear. These are the servos, control horns. I believe that's part of the landing gear. Some servo trays, landing gear. I believe those are for the rudder. Some hinges, and then some carbon rods. Carbon rods just to stiffen things up. I installed one here, and this guy goes all the way down. This one too. And I also installed one here. I believe, not that one. The wings take one on top and one on the bottom. If you look at the side, they're round, so you just kind of push them through. You don't jam them down through the slat. I guess you could, but I found just pushing it through that hole right there all the way down was the easiest thing to do. And try to cut your carbon rod first to length, and then start pushing that in. To cut my carbon rod, I just used a cutoff wheel on my Dremel. Took about 2 or 3 seconds. I'm going to cut it in half. Make sure you don't breathe in the dust. Okay, so we're going to, what I've been doing is just looking online at other pictures and seeing where things are mounted. It looks like the rear servos are mounted back here somewhere for the elevator and rudder. Servos for the wings, obviously they go in the wings. And you got to build this motor box, and it'll be installed up here next to it's gonna go something like this, and the motor box will be in there somewhere, and then landing gear with all those wood pieces should work out. I noticed there's no slits for the control horns, so I got to make sure I measure correctly so I get it straight and not crooked. So let's get going. Okay, the landing gear setup is going to be these 5 things. Basically what's going to happen is you're going to sandwich these together. These are going to go on the sides here and here, and then it's going to get stuck into here. I would probably put the landing gear in there first. It's going to slide right into that. Once these are sandwiched on to the outside into these notches, shove the landing gear in there and then install it right into that slot, and that should be how the landing gear fits together. Okay, after gluing this box together, I tried to stick this landing gear wire in that slot, and it was kind of impossible. I couldn't use my hand, so I stuck it in my vise, 2 legs like that, and I just tapped the wooden box down over the landing gear until it was kind of popped out of the top just a little bit, but when I put it on the airplane it didn't seem to make a difference. So when you're tapping this thing on, just be mindful of it popping out the other side, but it's pretty solid. I could imagine if you landed crooked or funny and bent something,
that this would never come apart without you breaking this box apart. So that's how I did it. I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but looks like it's okay. Okay, to assemble this wheel, it's got this little thing on there. It's in the bag, just a little piece of whatever that is. You're going to slide the wheel on, then you're going to kind of slide that on. Again, I held it in my vise, and I just tapped the top of it with a small hammer until it's flush with the landing gear, and then I just put a dab of glue on top. What you could probably also do is put the glue on the landing gear first and then put this thing on and tap it down. I guess either or is going to work. There's not going to be a lot of stress on there, and even if the wheel falls off, it's not really a big deal. But I think that's what I did. It'll be fine. However you want to do it's probably fine. Okay, it's fine as well. So we'll put the other one on, and then we're going to install it in the airplane, get this thing standing up, and then we're going to work on the motor box. Okay, the landing gear's on. Just kind of slid right in there, glued it all over, and I noticed there's a slit right here on top on the fuselage. I'm gonna guess that that's for like the aileron wires to come through here and then go back to, or up here to your receiver or whatever. But I think that's what that's for. So next is the motor box. You're gonna have two of those, and one of these things. So they're just gonna go on the side like that. And they're gonna go right into there. I took that off, so they'll slide right into there. I'll get that on here in a minute so you can see it. And then when these things go on, oh, this is the wrong side, but it's gonna go like that, and it'll cover the other side of it. So I'll get that glued in there. Let's see how that goes. Okay, there we go. I just glued it all at the same time, put the glue, kind of glued that to that. I put glue on the top side and the bottom side and the back side, and then I slid the whole thing in there. Pay attention to keep it straight, because if it's crooked you're going to have thrust issues. I just kind of put my finger on the side and feel for it to make sure it feels even on both sides, and on the back. Feels good. We're going to work on probably, I don't know yet, let me check. I decided to do the elevator next. I slid it in there and tried to eyeball it, but I needed it more better, so I drew a center line on here. It's 11 inches across, so it's about 5.5 for the center line, and about 280 millimeters. And about 140 millimeters is the center line, and that's from here, this crack, to that crack. That's what I did. Maybe you guys have some fancy tools to get the center line, but I just got a ruler. So we're going to install it onto that, glue it down. Make sure you do this before you put the rudder on, or else that's not going to fit. Okay, that's all glued together. If you didn't feel like doing all the measuring stuff, it's about 5 1/4 from the fuse to that elevator, or about 134 millimeters, 133, 134, right around there. And glued top, bottom, and I Go ahead and spray it with some of that. And while you're gluing that, if you haven't done this before, remember that spar or that carbon piece you slid in there? If you haven't glued that yet, now would be a good time to do it. So now we're gonna work on the rudder here. So I'm gonna come back to the rudder, but I noticed it came with these. They look like some really cheapy CA hinges for the rudder. First of all, I don't have any thin CA, which I would need for this. Plus, I don't think I'd want to use these. But since I'm buying some thin CA anyways, I might as well get the better ones of these. So I'll have to go to the hobby store later on this week, but we'll just jump to a different part of the plane, maybe the wings. We could throw those on real quick. Okay, I think I mentioned the fact earlier that there's two servo trays. There's a solid piece, and there's the one with like a notch cut out of it. Now, I just kind of used a little common sense or whatever I used, and I'm going to say that the one with the notch is for the servo that goes in the wing, because the servo wire has to go down into that hole and then back up out of the hole. And I guess when it comes back up out of the hole, you can stick it inside that groove and run it down the wing to your receiver. So that's just a guess I'm having. I'm not saying it's right, but it doesn't look wrong, because if I use this, the servo wire would be underneath that, and for it to come back up out of that hole, you know, it just doesn't really make sense. So I'm sticking with that idea. The one with the slit is for the aileron servos. Okay, so remember what I said. I probably didn't say it in this video, but my other videos I did. Get yourself one of these servo checkers, plug it in. First of all, make sure the servo's even working. Second of all, you want to center the servo at 1500. So that servo is centered. Now I'm going to unplug it, and it should be centered and ready to install into the wing. Okay, so I think my theory with the notch was right. That looks much better than not being there. And some of you may be wondering what kind of servos these are. These are just the standard 9-gram servos you get anywhere. I went with just the regular composite gear. They're not metal gear, they're not digital. They're just low analogs. This plane isn't going to fly fast at all. Although it does have a big control surface, you might want to opt for the metal gear. But the specs on the servo should be plenty for a really slow airplane. It's literally like walking speed slow. Although it could probably fly fast, I don't think it's designed to. So that's one of the servos. And we'll get the other ones installed and then we'll shove the wings on there. Okay, all done, but I made a mistake. Can you see what I did wrong? Basically, I put these on backwards. This wire should be closer to the leading edge, because that's where that slit is at. So this should have been on this wing. I realized that when I was putting this wing together, but I didn't want to do it correctly, because then they wouldn't be symmetrical. This wire would be here and this wire would be up here, so I just did them both wrong. It's still going to work. That's the leading edge, and it'll go through the little slit over there. But whatever. When you build it, make sure that this notch is next to that carbon spar. Unlike me, even if you do screw it up and put it backwards like I did, it'll be fine. Next, we're going to install the control horns, and there's some kind of funky stuff going on with that, but we'll show you how it works. Okie doke. Okay, next are the aileron control horns. So you got 4 of these guys. 4 of these guys. You can probably guess how that works. So sticking these through the holes was a little tight. Just kind of be careful so you don't break off these plastic things. And we're gonna stick the one of these in here. Just kind of measure. I like to keep my control horns close to the edge as possible so I can get maximum throw. So mine will probably end up being right there-ish, just so it doesn't hit the other side of the wing when it folds almost 90 degrees. So yeah, right about there is where I'm going to put it. I'm going to try to make this straight as possible and glue it down, and then I'll probably have to trim off a little bit of that, and it comes with these easy connect things, which are cool. I don't mind using those on this particular plane. Some other planes I'd opt out for something else, but this is not bad. So let's mount these up and get this guy mounted in there, and on the other wing glue it down and see what it looks like. Okay, I decided to put the quick link inside the servo arm on that hole, because if I use the outside hole it would just fall through. I had to remount the hole a little bit. Got a drill bit out of my case, and in case you're wondering, that's how big of a drill bit you would need. And let's see, which should be 1.8 millimeter, I suppose. And we're gonna stick it through there. What I did was I put one washer between the plastic and the nut, and no washer between this thing and the servo arm, because there is a gap in there, so you don't need that other washer, but you could put it if you want to. And then I screwed the nut on, not so tight that this thing didn't swivel back and forth, but just tight enough. And then once I was happy with the tightness, I dropped a little piece of glue, a little piece of CA right there, so that the screw doesn't back out. And then I squirted it with some accelerator. It's easier to take off the servo arm, put this on, bolt it all down, and then slide this whole assembly onto the push rod, and then mount the servo arm onto the servo once you center the servo using your servo tester over there. Okay, so I made another mistake that you guys can learn from. So I'm used to building traditional non-3D airplanes, but this, these things are supposed to go damn near 90 degrees both directions, and I didn't realize that until I plugged in my servo tester to test out the aileron. And it was just barely moving. So you guys can keep, if you guys don't want a ton of throw, you guys can use the standard 9-gram servo arms that are short, the ones that come with it, or you can get longer, much longer servo arms. And because I bought the plastic gear, I don't think the long arms are going to work on these servos. So I'm going to go source out some new servos, some metal gears, and then find the extended arms for them, as long as I can find, because that's a lot of throw right there. But you guys already knew that, right? So I'm going to go source those out, but in the meantime I'll put the rest of the airplane together. Okay, edit. Before you cut your carbon to length for the wings only, I think what's supposed to happen is you use the entire rod, put it through the wing, and it's going to stick out this side. So when you stick it through the airplane, the other wing can slide on to the carbon rods, and that'll give it a little bit more support, versus only the glue between this and the other wing is the only thing keeping it from folding. So the entire push rod is going to go through the wing. Don't put the other wing half on, because it's not going to fit through that hole with the big ailerons. So when you're ready to glue the wings on, you glue one wing on with the rods going through it, and then the other side you're going to slide the wing on to the rods and then glue the wing to the airplane. Okay, so here's the rudder. I installed some hinges. I just used an X-Acto right down the middle. Slid it. I stuck them in there to make sure they go down far enough. I pulled them back out and I dumped some thin CA into that hole, you know, about 5 drops or so, and I slid that in after I dropped it in, and I just kind of smush it back and forth, and then those little holes in there will absorb some glue and it'll stick in there. So this is the first side, and then we're going to put the rudder, we're going to line it up here, make the slits to line up with those hinges, and we're going to do the same thing, super glue, and then jam this thing on. Okay, there is the rudder with the 4 hinges, nice and tight in there. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this, this is EPP foam, so you can totally use regular CA glue without worrying about it melting the foam. Regular super glue is okay on EPP and EPO, and these are totally cool to use on this plane. You don't need to use the foam safe stuff. Also the accelerator, you don't need the foam safe stuff either. The next thing I'm going to do is install these red side things. I think we need to put this on first before the wing, since we got to slide that through the elevator over here. If the wing was on, it'd be tough to get that notch into the wing. So I'm going to slide this on first. I'm not going to glue anything, and then I'm going to test fit the wing and decide which one I'm going to glue first. Okay, I decided to tack the wing in. I put this on. It's not glued on, it's sitting there. The wing, I just tacked it in so it doesn't move. Make sure you have a 1/4 inch between the wing and the edge over here, because the entire plane is a 1/2 inch. So half of that would be a 1/4 inch, right? So I tacked it in so the wing is glued in basically. I'm going to install the other red thing. It's just going to sit there. I'm not going to glue it on, but I need to put it on first because of those forks. Then I'll put the other wing on, and when I slide that on, right before I mate them together, I'm going to goop a whole bunch of glue in there. Make sure these slide on nice, and kind of make sure it's working okay, I guess. Make sure it's straight, and then we'll glue these things on, and that should take care of the wings. Okay, I'm going to say that was probably the longest job on the plane. You'd think it'd be the simplest, but it wasn't. It was a long process. I just kind of laid it up against there. Now you got to be careful when you're gluing it on. You should probably hold the plane up and down, because if you hold it sideways, the fuselage might bend. And when you glue that red thing on, it might not come out straight. So I tacked one wing on after I put the 2 red things in because of the forks back here. And I stuck the other wing on, put a bunch of glue right in the middle where they mate, and then I just started kind of slowly. I tacked it with some thin, kind of all the way down, so it seeps all the way down in there, top and bottom, both sides. And then I used some thick stuff, just kind of went right around the edges like you're doing some caulking, top, bottom. And make sure you get this real good, because that's what's going to hold the wing. You want as much reinforcement as possible there. So again, I still dripped a bunch of thin and then thick, and put some accelerator on there. And then the last thing I did was getting these forks. They were all cockeyed, so I had to make them nice and straight, and glued those on. That was the last thing I did. Also, I kind of made, it wasn't a mistake, but I wasn't paying attention. Following it straight back to the nose, you can see that one of these sides is a little higher than the other. That's just because when I was holding it there, I guess I wasn't paying attention enough, and that thing wasn't quite straight ahead. But I mean, it's not going to affect anything. You can barely notice it, but I can notice it. Anyways, that was the rest of the plane. The plane doesn't look bad, actually. You know, I don't have long enough arms, but it's nice. So I think that's all of it for assembly. Now it's electronics time, and I'll go over the electronics that I bought for this. Okay, electronics. I'm going to be using the 2212 1250 kV. It's a smaller kV motor. This thing doesn't need to spin super fast, and I'll be using some 1045. These are slow flight props, since they're not going to be spinning very fast. The plane doesn't fly very fast. I'm also pairing it with a Hobbywing 20 amp, and so I stuck these on the wings as well. I don't know if you saw the previous install, but we were using these Tower Pros. These are cool, except the control horns they come with are like the standard size. This 3D plane needs a lot of travel, so I need the longer arms. These Emax ES08MA2s, they come with the long control arms. These are Metal Gear analogs, so these are now in the wing. I'm gonna go ahead and put, I only had 3, so this third one's gonna go in the rudder, and I'll go ahead and use the Tower Pros for the elevator. This arm does not come with it. This is made by Dubro. They have long servo arms for these 9-grammers. So I happen to have a arm. In case you're wondering, this is a 15 tooth. These are all 15 tooth. Most 9 grams are 15 tooth, I think. Mine are. So this long Dubro arm I'm sticking on here. This will be elevator, rudder, and that's my power setup. And we're going to go ahead and figure out a place to mount these. I've been looking at pictures online, and they go somewhere here in the middle. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the push rods that it comes with, and I'm just going to kind of measure out how far away these are going to be. So the first thing to do, I guess, is install the control horns for the tail feathers, which I haven't done yet. I guess it'd be a good idea to do it now, and then I can measure how far away. Looks like it just kind of gets glued up under here, so it doesn't look like it's too bad. The only thing I'm wondering about is I don't think the control horns that it comes with is going to fit here. Like, they want you to stick it over here or something, which means the push rod is not going to be straight. It's going to be kind of cockeyed over one to get to that. So I'll mess around with that, see what I come up with. Okay, so I decided to do the motor first, the motor and speed control, because those can't move. They got to stay right there. So I figured I'd put those in and kind of check to see how the CG is going to act. And by the way, the CG is directly on this spar. I got that from a couple of groups, RC groups and some other sites that confirmed it flies with the CG there. So I used that, and I just kind of balanced it after that was mounted and screwed down. And I'm going to put the battery up here, so I have a lot of space to move it back and forth. So it kind of doesn't matter where the servos go back here. However, there were some things I had to think about. So I put the servos here. That one of those wooden things, one of these things, I had to cut because it was too long for the elevator. That wasn't a big deal, and I glued that up there. And I had to buy some long servo arms, of course. So that's my elevator, and you can see the other one poking through, which would be the rudder. That's pretty much it on this side. So the rudder control horn is installed. And all the wires just kind of run down the side. And I'm going to stick the receiver right here, somewhere in that area. And I used my little slit and I ran the aileron, and this is the ESC. So all the wires come out right on this side. So we'll put the receiver up in there and bind it and see what happens. Okay, we're all done. Installed the prop and receiver. I had to use a couple extensions for the servos, receiver, and just kind of zip tied it up the best I could. We already bound it. The only thing you might want to consider is putting a kickstand or something right there under the back of the fuselage. I put a piece of wood, but obviously it's not touching the ground. I thought it was. This thing's been on a stand the whole time, so now that I see the tip of the edge of the rudder hitting the ground, I'll figure something out. Maybe I'll put an old control horn or something down there to skid on. It's bound, and these longer servo arms are really great. So what I did, and I don't know if I mentioned it, these Emax, I think they're 12 gram, but they're the same size as the 9 gram. These are the ES08MA 2s. They come with the long servo arm, and you can buy a 4-pack of these on Value Hobby for like 18 bucks, and they're totally cool. Metal Gear. They're analogs. They have digitals as well, but if that's your thing, you can get the digitals. They're not much more, actually. I think they're actually $1 more each, so not too bad. This is a 10 by 4.5 slow fly prop, and I'm using the Value Hobby E400 1250 kV. I think I went over that, which is a 2212, and it looks like you could put a longer motor, but I think the max is going to be a 22 millimeter diameter, so nothing above a 22XX, whatever. You might be able to fit, actually no, you might be able to fit a 23 in there if you wanted to, like a 2312 or something. And as far as shortness, the 2212 is okay. I wouldn't go much shorter than that, so that's good. And everything's working. I got very good deflection. I put my radio away, sorry. I'll have to do another video while I'm at the field flying this thing, show you how it works. Oh, and if you're wondering, my battery's going to go right there, which plugs in. That's it. So we're waiting for a sunny day. We'll take this out to the field and see how it does.